Hello, disruptors, and welcome back to another episode of Mindset Mastery Moments with yours truly. And I have a guest that I cannot wait for you all to hear and learn and grow and glow from today. I am thrilled to bring him in. He embodies what it means to dream bigger, think deeper, and take action with purpose. Now listen, whether you're a coach, speaker, a leader, or just someone trying to live with bold intention, today's episode is going to help you unlock some serious mindset shifts. Our guest is none other than Mr. Mitch Matthews, a success coach, a speaker, serial entrepreneur, and the creator of Dream, Think, Do podcast, a top 1% podcast worldwide, and a favorite of the Huffington Post. He's interviewed icons like Brendan Burchard, Jamie Kern Lima. Oh my gosh, and you know I love these people. We talk about them all the time. Julian Michaels, and so many more. But here's what I love most about Mitch. He is on a mission to help you give yourself permission to go after what it is that you were created to do. So Mitch, welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments, and we're just so excited to have you. Just tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
I love it. It is such an honor to be here. I love your podcast. You are doing such great work. So I love it. I love it. So yeah, you did an incredible job. I just want to have you come around and introduce me all the time. I feel energized. So that was fantastic. Absolutely. So I am a coach, a speaker, a podcaster. I love doing all those things, serial entrepreneur for a long time. But I'm also, more importantly, a husband, a dad, a lifelong learner. I love podcasts because I am just continuously curious, and I love to have conversations with people, and podcasts are such a great excuse to have great conversations with amazing people. So yeah, I'm wildly blessed to get to do a lot of, I think, what I was put on the planet to do. And I feel like that's a big part of my call is I'm here to help people figure out why they're here and to do that more and more.
I absolutely love that. And I connect with that, Mitch, because I don't think there's nothing more important except knowing why you were here and doing it. And that's the part where you and I have this big synergy already, is the do part. Because when I was just explaining to one of my clients earlier this morning, I said, here's the thing about life. Just because you know your purpose, it doesn't mean that you're in all clear. It's going to be an easy ride from here. The stuff is still going to happen, and a lot of shift is still going to happen. However, because you have such clarity about what you're doing and why you're doing it, why you're doing what you're doing, you find ways through those tunnels that seem so dark. You go over, whether it's a pebble or a rock or a mountain or an avalanche, you just find your way through it because you know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing. So when you came to giving birth to your podcast, how did your own story shape this mission?
I love it. So before we hit record, I know I mentioned I had a couple of podcasts that never saw the light of day. It's one of those things that I had kind of started on a mission where I knew I wanted to create a podcast. And it was back at a time where podcasting wasn't as popular as it is today. And for me, I was just like, you know what? I love to have conversations. And I basically started one on entrepreneurship, and then I started one on dream jobs. And what I loved was I realized very quickly I was enjoying these conversations immensely. But what I was bumping into was like, I want a topic that's bigger than the kind of the first two topics that I had discussed. And I was like, I want a topic that will allow me to go after the kind of conversations and the kind of people that I want to be talking with. But at the same time, I need a focus so that people know why they're listening. And what's funny is I went back, and this is why I always encourage people to start and start messy, because oftentimes clarity doesn't come in the beginning. It comes as a part of the process. And that's exactly what it was for me. Was I went back and I listened to the interviews that I had done in those, kind of messy, unclear initial podcasts. And I realized that I loved talking about big dreams that people had. And I loved talking about what was the thinking they had to get to in order to actually take action. And then I love talking about them taking, doing that, actually taking action. And so these words kept bubbling up of dream, think, do, dream, think, do. And for me, I realized that, and I've been coaching, success coaching since 2002. And I looked back on that and realized that Dream Think Do wasn't just a catchy name, which I hope it is, right? I hope
it's very catchy,
name, right? But for me, it's also a process. It is a 3-step process that you have to give yourself space and time to dream without thinking. You have to dream, meaning you have to think about what do you want? What would you want to experience? What would you want to do? And that dreaming time needs to be without limits, right? At the same time, after that time of dreaming, then we need to move into thinking. Then you do need to put a plan together. You do need to think about steps, and you think sequence. And then you need to take action. And what's interesting is I see people dream without thinking and doing. I see people thinking without dreaming and without doing. And then I see people doing and they didn't dream or think. So it's like, okay,
and it's not a great formula when you don't follow, and it's not just a formula, it's the sequence, right?
Yep, exactly right. It is. And what's beautiful about it is it's a sequence that repeats over and over again. So many people that I've interviewed, they didn't know about dream, think, do as a sequence. But when we boiled down a lot of their successes, that's exactly what they did. They'd given themselves space to say, what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? Or for some people, it's what do I want to fix in the world? What do I see that's broken that I want to play a part in fixing? Then they put a plan together. They started to think. And as you well know, as you teach so well, a lot of it, the thinking does involve planning and strategy, but so much of the thinking where we've got to take a dream and then take action, so much of the thinking is getting over bad thinking, right? You've got to get over some of those patterns that you've had in the past that have limited you. You've got to get into new thinking in order to actually take action and do. And so it's just been amazing to see kind of how that happens over and over. And so often when somebody then accomplishes a goal or a dream, I always say there's often a back door to every dream. Once it's accomplished, or as you're accomplishing it, then you find a back door and all of a sudden you're on to that next dream, or one dream leads you to another. And so I love how it is a sequence, and it's a repeating sequence for a lot of successful people.
It is. And the more I think about it, like you said, so many people do it and they do it. So, they don't realize that that's what they've been doing on repeat. And that's why you're a thought leader, because you're able to build a system that anyone who may be doing it backwards or missing one step can follow it and achieve that level of success. And obviously you have, when we talk about you working with companies like NASA, Nike, United Airlines. But what I admire most is how you've stayed grounded in your own values from listening and doing a little bit of reading about you, of course. That's my job, right? That's the part where I get to pretend I'm a journalist.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I always say when I'm doing research, I've got to stay this side of stalker laws, right? I don't want a restraining order, but I do want to know about the person I'm talking to. It's weird.
I think so because it's like, I was wrapping up my research on Mitch Matthews, and I went to your Instagram and I was liking, because you were saying there were so many clips of you dropping some powerful gems, or you had a couple guests. I'm like, okay, this is when it gives stalker vibes, so chill out, girl. But when stuff is hitting my spot,
I did not pick up any stalker vibes. I was just honored. I'm like, oh,
I think once you hit 3 likes in a row, you're getting on there.
I love it.
Yeah, so you stayed this pathway with your values, faith, family, and that fierce focus. That is what my 2025 is all about. That balance is so rare. What keeps you centered, Mitch?
It's a great question, and it's a deep need for it. I think some people, pick their mindset because for a number of reasons. Sometimes, as you well know, they have a mindset because that's what they grew up in.
Right.
And sometimes that serves them well. Sometimes that doesn't. Some people have a mindset because they've chosen it. I know I have a mindset that it's like, hey, this is what I need. And so my faith is really important to me. And so I wake up each day and spend time in that. I spend time with scripture and prayer because I need it. Right. And it's so funny because some people will say, well, gosh, isn't faith a crutch? And it's like, well, yeah. And I need that crutch.
Let me have it.
And it
Let
helps
me
me to
have
be at my
that
best.
whole system set up.
That's
I'm a crutch
exactly right.
around.
Exactly right. And it's that thing of it. That is absolutely what works for me. And it has made all the difference. And, I've literally had miracles in my life that I couldn't explain any other way than a God that loves me very much. It's not everybody's thing, and that's just fine. I love
But it's
that's
our
the thing
thing.
with Dream Think Do. Yeah, I always say, like, you don't have to believe what I believe. My wife doesn't believe all the I believe. My best friend doesn't believe all that I believe, and we can still be in relationship, right? But isn't that also what makes us interesting, right?
That's
The
what makes
different
us
things and the
interesting.
things that cross over. There's so many things for you and I. Like looking at, I did a little stalking too, and there's so much crossover with what we do, right? And that's
Yes.
fantastic. And then to also say, hey, what else is in there? What do we believe that's the same? What do we believe that's different? And isn't
Yes.
that
And how can we
a best
explore
part of
it and
life?
just learn about it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's been a huge part. And I know for me, the faith component, the way I see it is like truly I'm put here to do a number of things, but one of those things I feel like is that God put me here to help people figure out why they were put here. And as long as I stay in that lane, oh my gosh, I'm unstoppable. And
I love
and
that.
yeah, and it's that same thing. Like I have another podcast called Encouraging the Encouragers, which is for coaches, speakers, and content creators. I called them the Encouragers. We are the Encouragers. And if I stay in that lane, I've just realized, like, if I'm encouraging encouragers, I can do that all day long.
That is
At the
easy
same
work,
time,
right?
yep. At the same time, if I step out of those lanes, that's usually when I get frustrated. That's usually when I get tired. That's usually when my business doesn't grow. When I start to get into other things that maybe seem logical or other things that people say that I should do, it's those things that drain me. But boy, if I stay in my lane, I'm an unstoppable force. It's kind of like, you are an unstoppable force, right? Especially when you're talking about those things that you feel so passionate about.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I try to do. I've just learned that, hey, if I stay in that zone, I have a whole lot more fun and I have a lot more success.
Exactly. And your life is richer even without and I love that you broke it down, that fierce focus. That's what that is. But
Yeah.
you can only focus fiercely and become unstoppable when you're at that level of clarity about what your zone of genius is. And that's what I want our listeners and viewers to hear. You know what your zone of genius is. You also have a formula that you have dream, think, do. And then you've also figured out what your important essentials are that fills you up so you can stay filled. And then now that's the expression of who you are. That's what I talk about when I say career. A lot of people think when I say career, they're thinking about a job. I'm like, no, I talk about a purpose grounded career that is the expression of your soul, that you get to leave a legacy that outlives you, right?
Yep.
And that right there, you are unstoppable. Nothing stops you until God decides you're taking your last breath.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I love it. Even as you say that though, like it is amazing to see how you light up just as you're on fire when you talk about that stuff. So it's like, that's your zone of genius. And I do love it. Like, and I know there's a lot of people that don't feel like that's where they're at. I know for me, I came out of college, I did some business to business sales. Then I got into the pharmaceutical world and really had a lot of success. Back then, it was a really interesting sell. It was a really interesting process. It was a lot of fun. It was a real challenge. But then I kept getting promoted. And my last job in the pharmaceutical industry, I call it a bad fit job. And, after a number of really great fit jobs where I'd had a lot of success, all of a sudden this bad fit job felt terrible. And it wasn't a bad job. It was just a bad fit for me, right? Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how I knew it within days. Like I took the promotion and I knew it within days. It's like, oh no, this is a bad fit. And it's amazing because each day I drove to it, I felt like a little bit of me was dying. And a lot of people say, well, gosh, that's where I feel like I'm at. And I always say, hey, learn, like stop. It's the dream, think, do process to say, all right, what are some of the things you dream about doing? What would you love to do? And don't think about the how too early. That's the thinking process. And the thinking process is important, but think about the what first. Like what might be your zone of genius? What might be the thing you want to do? Maybe not the rest of your life, but for this next season, what might be that thing? What would you love to experience more? Who would you love to work with more? And give yourself that permission to think about the what, and then you can start to work into the how. I know for me, when I was in that bad fit job, I had come out of a really great fit job where I was in the training department of a $2 billion pharmaceutical company, and I was coaching and I was speaking every day, and I absolutely loved it. And in this bad fit job, there was none of that. There was no development. And one particular night, I came home. Again, the fire in me was going out, and my wife brought me this magazine. It was a Business Week magazine, and she's like, "Hey, this article. This is about what you do." And I looked, and it was a story on an entrepreneur, and I just didn't get it. It didn't click. And she goes, no, not the main story. It was the sidebar. And this sidebar was about this entrepreneur's coach. Right. She's like, that's what you do. That's what you do. When you do that, you light up. That's what you do. And I'm like, is that even a job? Like, what is that? And so I gave myself permission to then, dig into that and find out what that might be, and then start to explore it. And that's really where it starts, is to say, hey, I don't have to have this whole thing figured out, but give yourself permission to start to explore what it might be. Yeah. And as you do, you will find your zone of genius, the more ferociously, focused you are on that.
You are. Woo! Here's the thing. Before we dive all into the power of permission, right? Because I've got goosebumps looking into your work around that and how well you've put that together for us to be able to use as a tool to bring transformational shift in our mindsets and our lives.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people listening. You just went into a really great process. And I know a few people would have caught what you were putting down about shifting out of that career you're stuck in. Mm-hmm. But for a second, I want you to talk to someone or a couple people that are listening when it comes to relationships. It might be a romantic relationship or a business type relationship. That's one of the places where I believe I can speak for myself, and I've seen it repeated throughout working with colleagues and clients, is the reason we get stuck in jobs that is not quite a good fit is because we've already created a pattern in our life that we stay in relationships. We belong, and they're not good fits, but we're still there. Or they might have been a good fit at one point, but for next level, or now it's not. So I want you to speaking to how someone who might be with a misfit relationship in their personal, familiar, or the romantic or business, how do they really pull themselves through that? By dreaming, thinking, and doing.
That's so good. I love that. And it's funny because back in that season of the bad fit job, I was definitely in a bad relationship, and that was my career. And what's interesting, and I will readily admit it. I'm not proud of it, but I will readily admit that we were living a sitcom life, which means my wife and I decided we both worked until we started having kids, and our thing was that whoever's making more money, they will keep working, and whoever's making less money will stay home with our boys for a little while. And so I don't know whether I won that or lost that race, but my wife, I was making more at the time. So my wife stayed home with our boys. So that meant we had a single income, we had 2 children, and we had an oppressive mortgage. So it was one of those things where I would have loved to immediately quit that bad fit job. But because we were in this sitcom situation, which was, I joke about it now with some distance, but at the time, I felt like I was in a prison, right? There was it did not look like I had any options. And I had gotten myself into that situation, right? I actually had to move for this job. I moved back to Iowa. My wife and I both grew up in Iowa. I lived in England a couple of times. We met in college in Iowa, moved to Montana after we got married, lived in Montana, then lived in Chicago, came back to Iowa. But I had done that, like I moved for this job. And so all of a sudden I was in a situation where, although we were back in the state I'd grown up in, we moved back to a town we didn't know anybody, a city we didn't know anybody. And so I just felt trapped on trapped on trapped. And there was not any option to just say, you know what? I'm just going to quit my job and I'll figure it out, right? I had to figure it out on the side. And that's one of the things that I really recommend to people, whether it's a career relationship or, a relationship. Sometimes it's absolutely best to just end things, but sometimes you just can't.
You can't.
So it's that thing of being able to say, for me, what I had to do was start to give myself permission to experiment. And that's what I did. I said, okay, I don't know if this whole coaching thing is going to be the end all be all. I don't know if I'll be able to do it and replace my income. I don't know if this is a viable thing, but I at least can go learn. I can go get some training. And that's what I did next. I went, it's a conversation for probably a different time, but I went with a big name organization, all of that. Good training, but didn't have any business training.
Thing. So, on camera, I can't wait to hear which one it was.
Exactly. So, but I came back more confident in my coaching, had no idea on the business side, but I said, hey, I'm just going to give myself permission to continue to experiment with this. And that's what I did. I started to experiment on the side. I didn't quit my day job, but I started to experiment with little things on the side, trying it here, trying it there, trying different things. And, grace of God and a whole lot of hard work, we were able to make that work in a short amount of time. We figured out what I now call the 6-figure sequence, which was basically a process for being able to find great fit clients, onboard great fit clients, all of that. And I thought it was going to be 5 years, and it wound up being about 5 months. That's why we teach now other coaches and speakers that 6-figure sequence in some of the training that we do, that kind of stuff. But for me, I had to give myself the permission to both say, hey, I don't know if this is it, but I'm going to try it, and I'm going to experiment. And then allow you as you experiment, some of those experiments are going to go the way you thought they would go. Sometimes they're not, but you have to commit to learning as you're experimenting. And as you do that, you will then oftentimes not only find your zone of genius, but to also find the people you are passionate about helping. And that goes to whether you want to be an entrepreneur and have your own business or in a career. Oftentimes it's finding that work, finding those people you want to do that work for, or finding the people that you want to serve, all of that. The best way to do that is through experimenting, not guessing.
I love it. Absolutely. Now, let's get into this fire you've been spreading. If you guys can catch it, he has said the word permission quite a few times already. He's lit the fire on the microphone as well. The conversation around permission, because so many high achievers are waiting for a green light from the world, when it's really the power that lies within that really fuels everything that you really want when it comes to being successful. And I would suggest being successful, being you and why you were created. So let's break down your 5 permission principles. This is the part I've been waiting for.
I absolutely love it. Well, we can walk through them each individually. I know one of them, for me, it kind of goes back to even with the coaching, and it's exactly what I did. Is it can start with just giving yourself permission to be a novice. And I know that is crazy for some people, but I know you work with successful people as you coach, successful people. I work with highly successful people. I usually coach executives and entrepreneurs and founders. They're wildly successful, but they need to be reminded as they're doing something new, whether it's starting a new business or starting a new project or thinking about doing something different in their career, you have to give yourself permission to be a novice again. And that really is, I mean, it's funny. I think it's actually a harder choice for highly successful people than it is for people who haven't found a lot of success, because highly successful people have had success. They feel visible. They also feel like it's a higher risk to not be good at something. They've been good at something for a long time. And to be a novice means you might not be good at it, all those things, right? But I said, fall in love with being a novice, because a novice, beautiful about a novice is when you embrace being a novice in a certain area, right? It doesn't have to be everywhere, but to say, hey, in this thing, I'm going to be a novice. And a novice doesn't worry. There's no expectation a novice is going to be good at something immediately, right? A novice can be curious. A novice can be open. A novice can make mistakes and learn from them.
Right.
And it's so freeing to give yourself that permission. But like I said, I know you've got a lot of high achievers that listen to your show. And so I want to encourage you, the high achiever that's listening to this, lean into that a little bit, because again, if you've had success in one area or maybe even multiple areas for a long period of time, this is going to have to be a conscious choice that you make to say, you know what? I'm going to try something new. I'll never forget. I talked with somebody on my podcast, and he was a successful trial attorney. And really, I think it was maybe in the 97th percentile of wins in the courtroom. Like, this guy was incredible and unbeatable. But he found himself starting to fall out of love with law. And nobody knew it. He still was winning court case after court case, but it was one of those things where he just knew inside that he wasn't feeling it anymore. And there was a part of him that thought, maybe I should quit law, I don't get to claim any responsibility for what he did, but he did. He did the dream, think, do process. He started to give himself permission to take night classes and just be a novice in some different things. And he settled into one night class, which was a cooking class, and he realized he was okay at cooking, but the segment that he did on chocolate, oh my gosh, he loved it. And so we did another night class on chocolate and started to really kind of mess around with chocolate recipes. And one of the things that made him such a good attorney, a trial attorney, was his heart for justice. And when he started to get into chocolate, he started to kind of look at the chocolate industry, and he started to see how a lot of the producers, especially in the cocoa producers, there was no justice. They were not getting justice. They were being destroyed and abused by these big chocolate companies. And so not only did he fall in love with making chocolate, he fell in love with the idea of helping those farmers. And so
his legal skills.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so his name is Sean Askinosie, and you can look up Askinosie chocolate now. But he has a micro brand. Oprah has said it's one of her favorite chocolates. He's been featured in Fortune magazine. He now is a full-time chocolate maker, small batch chocolate maker in Missouri, of all places.
Oh my God.
Loves it, runs the company with his daughter. They sell chocolate all over the world. But it wasn't an immediate thing. What I love about his story is such a great story. It is the example of somebody saying, hey, I know, I don't, and I love it. Like, he was like, I don't know if chocolate's my thing, but I'm at least going to have some fun with it. And he had to be a novice at that. And then when he started to look at the industry and agriculture, he didn't have any history with that, but he started to give himself permission to look at that. And now they have this whole thing where it's beautiful. They have a system of open books with their producers. So their producers, the actual farmers all around the world, can look at Sean's books, and they get to see its transparency. They get to see how much they're making from Sean. And it is absolutely beautiful. It's really innovative, really incredible.
Benchmark, a prefaces, a roadway of excellence in that industry, only because he submitted to his curiosity and gave himself permission to be a novice.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
I can tell
right.
you that it's the same thing with me in this whole podcast, but my story does not conquer that, guys. I hope you guys caught that. I'm going to cut this out and make sure that whole piece is right there, and anybody I mentor is saying, like, I just need them to listen to that. I would have to say,
I love it. I love it. Absolutely. And go get yourself some Askinosie chocolate too. You will thank yourself.
I'm going to look it up. You better believe.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I think
she knows good stuff. She doesn't put her name behind anything.
That's right. She does. So I love it. I love it. So, I mean, you brought up one of the other things right there too, though, is that, one of the other things as we're moving into dreaming more and bigger and thinking better and doing more of what you're put on the planet to do, you just brought up a great point. You were like, well, my story compared to Sean's story. Right? One of the things you have to be really careful with permission is to give yourself permission to not compare. Yeah, because I know that's a natural temptation. Like I will say, like I don't believe in this is a whole other conversation for some other time, but like I don't believe in evolution across species, but I very much believe in evolutionary psychology.
Come on.
And that is basically how our brains have evolved over time to keep us safe, right?
Yes.
And comparison is a part of that. It is a part of the tribal brain. And there really is a part of our evolutionary brains, our evolutionary thinking, that is what's called upward comparison and downward comparison. And neurologists say, and psychologists say that some of that is good because basically, thousands of years ago, we needed to make sure we were bringing value to the village so that we didn't get kicked out.
Right.
So that lions, tigers, and bears would not eat us at night. We need to stay in the village. We need to stay in the tribe. That's what's called tribal thinking, right?
Yes.
So there's some upward and downward comparison. It's just a part of the way we're wired. So we have to recognize when our brain does that. Mm-hmm. At the same time, our generation, like the generation that we're born into, and trust me, I love a lot of the generation that we're born into. Like I like indoor plumbing. I like air conditioning. I like driving cars, right? Like I love it.
Can't imagine life without it.
That's exactly right. But at the same time, there has been no generation that has been exposed to comparison more than our generation. Right? Like it's just never, like every generation has its individual and unique challenges. But our generation is a generation where we have an epidemic of comparison. So we do have to be careful with that. So as you start to think about, dream of doing new things, think about how you might do those things, start to take action and do those things.
Yes.
Part of it is you have to give yourself permission to say, hey, I'm not going to compare myself. I'm not going to compare myself to somebody who's been doing it for 10 years. Like Sean Askinosie did not think when he was experimenting in a night class with chocolate, he wasn't comparing himself to the best chocolatiers in the world, right? He just said, hey, I want to make a batch that's better than last night's batch.
Right.
So I'm not going to compare to somebody else. I'm going to compare to me yesterday. Yes. Right. So that is a huge part of this. And then to also recognize when it's starting to happen, you can even tell your brain like, hey, it's okay. Like, I know what you're doing. You're trying to keep me safe. You're trying to keep me in the village, but I'm not at risk of getting voted off the island. I'm not at risk of getting thrown out of the tribe. So I appreciate your brain. You're just trying to keep me safe, but I'm going to keep experimenting. I'm going to keep giving myself permission to try this new thing, right? Because that is like we can compare. And then also part of it is giving yourself permission for some people to not get it. One of the things we talk about too is when you start to do this process, when you start to dream bigger, start to think better, and start to do more of what you're put on the planet to do, some of the people around you aren't going to like it.
Exactly.
And we say you got to find, permission to maybe get some new friends. Because some of your friends, when you start to change, when you start to grow, when you start to stretch, when you start to do new things, some of your friends will absolutely celebrate it. And lean into those friends. Be grateful for those friends.
Yes.
But you know it. Some of your friends are not going to like it because when you grow, it reminds them they're not growing.
They're not growing.
And most people, they don't want it, right? Like that's like that makes me uncomfortable. You're growing. I'm not growing. I don't like that. And so they will often either try to poo-poo or shut down the things that you're doing, make fun of, right? Caution you against it. All those question, absolutely mock, right?
Yes.
And that's one of those things where you have to give yourself permission to give your community, your tribe, an upgrade. And say, oh, hey, I'm going to have to start finding some new people. And here's the thing is,
I just wrote a post about that. Ooh, I love it.
I love it. Yeah. So like my wife is absolutely amazing, and she is my biggest encourager. I'm her biggest encourager.
That's how you know you got a purpose, mate.
Absolutely. I'm married up. When you meet my wife, you will go like, Mitch is cool, but his wife is amazing.
Right? There's always a magic behind every great man, and it's usually the amazing wife that he has.
100%. And she can question things. Like, we give each other permission to dream, but we also give each other permission to say, hey, I've got questions about this. I mean, we're working on a business strategy together. Yeah, absolutely. And it's that thing of being able to go, hey, and we have a process for being able to say, hey, we're dreaming right now. That's awesome. But we have a process to also come back and check and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts? And we don't call it devil's advocate because I don't
do nothing on behalf of the devil.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I don't want to give him too much credit.
I don't do devil eggs. I don't do dirt devil. I don't do devil's advocate. I don't do nothing on behalf of the devil.
I love it.
Even as far as away as I can.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So we give each other permission, windows of time to say, hey, can I ask you a couple of follow-up questions on that? Or when you're thinking, to be able to say, okay, I love this part of the plan. I love this part of the plan. This is getting me thinking, or I'm concerned about this. And we can have that conversation, and it's not dream killing. It's being able to, be safe with
it's
each other.
Accountability.
Yep.
And it's also risk management.
Absolutely. And I have one other friend who I have coffee with every Friday morning. We have given each other that permission we encourage each other nonstop, but we also push each other and challenge each other. You have to give yourself permission. So giving yourself permission to upgrade your tribe is not just trying to find people who always agree with you. It's finding the kind of people who will celebrate your growth, challenge you to grow, right? And encourage you to grow, but also be growing themselves, right? And that you can then turn around and encourage them as well.
Yes. Ooh, I love that. You say stop waiting to be discovered and step into your lane boldly. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I don't know about you. Yeah, you were probably a great athlete in high school and school. And all that stuff.
I was a great athlete in elementary, and I did okay in high school because I guess I created that limitation too for myself as I hear it. I was a short girl who was coming in first all the time, and then these girls were so tall, and I was coming in fourth and fifth in the sprint, and I did the distance, but I did really well at shot put, cricket, and discus, but I fade out on an athletic career after a while.
Exactly. Well,
I was going to the Olympics, but.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's those things you do figure out, like, okay, maybe I wasn't put here to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I always I bring up athletics a little bit because athletics is one of those things. Some people excel in athletics, and that's fantastic. But with athletics, probably everybody remembers maybe at least one time when you did the thing where they broke up teams and you had two captains picking teams, and you didn't get picked first, you didn't get picked second, you didn't get picked third, maybe fifth, sixth, seventh round, whatever, right? That was my norm. I was not an athlete at all, so I was not getting picked first for anything. And the reason why I bring that up when you talking about giving yourself permission to step into something new is that so many people are waiting for somebody to pick them.
Ooh.
So many people are waiting to they're waiting for somebody else to give them permission to do something new. And most of the time, especially, I've done over 400 interviews for Dream, Think, Do. Yeah. And in almost every situation, it wasn't a matter of somebody waiting until somebody gave them permission. Yeah. It was they had to go out and start to do something without somebody saying, all right, now it's your time. Now it's your time. Now, I will say that in many cases, they did get eventually picked for different things or different opportunities, right? Like Jillian Michaels, as an example. Jillian Michaels, when we had her interview, she was so funny. She came in late. She was in the midst of selling her house, and there was a lot of stress in her life. And she came on, and if you know Jillian Michaels, she's pretty much always fired up. I love her.
Yes, she is.
So she came on, and before we ever hit record, we're just talking about life and just some of the stuff that's going on. And she wound up just being really raw and really real and emotional. And I loved the conversation. But one of the things she talked about was she grew up a chubby kid, far from where, what you would think of her today. But she had to give herself permission to find sports that she really enjoyed. And so she found martial arts, and then she found different types of sports that weren't the normal sports. She just wasn't good at normal sports. Right. So she had to give herself permission to find things she was passionate about. And a lot of those things were not what the cool kids in her high school were into. And so she had to give herself permission to say, I'm not going to try to be a cool kid. I'm just going to find the things that I really enjoy. And what I love about her story is she kept giving herself permission to run these experiments, try these new things. And eventually, when they were looking for a trainer for The Biggest Loser, she did get tapped for that. Somebody did pick her, but no one would have picked her had she not been doing all of this work when it felt like no one was looking. But boy, when they were looking for, those coaches, those first coaches, they wanted somebody just like Jillian, somebody that looked at the world differently, somebody that actually, was willing and able to do things different than most trainers and coaches and things like that. So the very thing that felt like made her an outsider growing up, when she leaned into those things, it helped her to has set herself up for amazing success. I mean, like billions of dollars in revenue on her fees, and just all the things that she's done. And a big part of it was she had to give herself permission to experiment with those things, try those things when no one was looking and no one was asking.
You just really affirmed in me, I guess, in this current right now space that I'm in, and seeing certain things come to pass in my own life and being asked to be in certain places. And for me, that I was just having one of my best friends in the world, Deb and I, we were talking about that, and knowing that I feel sometimes we play small in our own lives, in our own minds,
100%.
In our own minds, because we might be doing that comparison thing. Like sometimes it's not a comparison to someone else. It's a comparison of where I am based on, and then where I am determined to be. And we're doing this comparison. It's like, well, I'm not here, not understanding that you chipping away and doing the work in private, positioning yourself in private, even when no one really believes, cares, or even have anything to say, or a lot of things to say that doesn't support what you're doing. But you're positioning yourself and believing in what you know to be a true pull factor for you in the direction of your purpose. And so I've been in that space. And so you're encouraging me right now, and I'm pretty sure a bunch of other people listening out of the thousands that do, is that give yourself permission to position yourself with what you know you're called to. Don't even attach too much outcome. Sometimes you don't have all the clarity in the world, because God sometimes he says, okay, go ye therefore into all the world, preach the gospel. And I'm going to go scriptural on you because that's my base, guys. If you know something else, you can plug it in. But when he said that, it's like, okay, dude, go where, when, how, who's paying?
Exactly right.
So
what many tickets do I get? Yeah,
exactly right. So that's the question. And then he says, so with me, God says, create this movement, Mindset Mastery 360. And I'm like, dude, can we wait in the next 5 years when the ship starts coming in with the money I've been sowing into? Because right now I don't have the manpower, and I had all the things, And he's like, no. I said, do it. I'm like, well, can you give me what's going to happen next when I put this out there? Who's going to come? When are they going to come? How's this? And silence. I'm like, bruh, what are you doing?
Dude.
He comes back and he says, do. Go.
Yeah.
Because I've already been dreaming and I've been thinking and I've been planning. I've written the vision, but I put it up nice. 5 years from now, maybe when I have, $200,000 to just cover all the expense for this. And he's like, now. And so I stepped into that space with obedience and doing it completely afraid and doing a whole lot of that. I wish I had a whole bunch of help, but a bunch of other people believe in the dream and the vision. And they came alongside me, but still they cannot show up the way they want to because they got other things they need to do. And so you just encouraged me that level of staying consistent with the small things, trusting that each step will reveal. I remember one of my coaches saying to me, if God ever showed you all the details, you would never say yes, you will run.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
I'm sure Julia Michaels was showing all the things she would have had to go through and some of the people she'd had to meet and all the long hours that she would have to just stay up to be coaching people on that television and how many times she'd pour into them and they won't get it. She'd probably be like, I'd rather just do a 9 to 5. Let me do my
hard pass.
You know what I'm saying? So I want someone to catch that. Last one on your permission, your 5-part is permission to not have all the answers. Oops, I kind of jumped in there a little bit already.
That's
this
good.
Is the one where every overthinker, every perfectionist, aka Dr. Whyte, I'm a recovering perfectionist. Why is uncertainty still a gift? Is what you call it? Why is it a gift?
Yeah. I love it. Well, that is such an important thing. And I'm right there with you. I teach on this because I need to be reminded of it daily. Mm-hmm. And I think perfectionism, we talked a little bit about the devil and I don't want to give him too much credit, but I do think that perfectionism is one of the devil's best strategies ever because it starts when we start to have perfectionism, it starts feeling like we're shooting and pursuing excellence. But what's interesting about perfectionism, and a lot of people, again, you got a lot of rock stars, you got a lot of high achievers that listen to this show. So this is important because there's people who think, well, I'm not a perfectionist, because what they think with perfectionism is they think a perfectionist that their desk looks like it could be on the front of Elle Decor and that their kitchen is perfectly organized and that every part of their house is just perfectly designed and organized, everything in its place. Mm-hmm. But perfectionists, we're pile people, right? We're pile people because we'll go to a meeting and we'll bring home hand out a participant's guide, whatever, and we will put that on the corner of our desk because we don't have the perfect place to file it yet.
Yes.
Right? But we tell ourselves, like, I'm going to file this in the perfect place. But until then, I'm going to put this on the corner of my desk, right? Yes. And then you come back from another meeting or another gathering and you put that next thing, that next piece of paper goes on the pile. And then you bring that book home and you just put that on the pile. And then somebody comes over to your house and you got to, they're going to look at my desk. So you put that pile and you shove that in a box desk. Or a bag. Exactly right. In your drawer. And now your drawer is a bunch of piles, stuff like that, right?
Talking about me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that's the thing. Like a lot of people go, wait, that's perfectionism? Like, oh my gosh. Or if you're a recovering perfectionist or you're a perfectionist, oftentimes, if you've got a report that's due at midnight on Tuesday, you are hitting send at 11:59 because you need that deadline to push you through that last 10%. Perfectionists tend to be people who start easily, finish hard because that last 10%, it's not perfect, so it feels almost impossible. And you need the deadline to push you through to say, okay, well, screw it. It's got to be done. So done is better than not done. I'm going to send it. Right. And so that's what pushes you through. And the reason why this is so important is oftentimes when people are thinking about dreaming bigger, thinking better, and doing more, when it comes to the doing part, we wait for the perfect moment.
Wow.
But we can't wait for the perfect moment because the perfect moment doesn't exist. Because for the perfectionist, right, we can always find the need for more perfect. Like it's a pretty good time, but it's not the perfect time. I've got some money, but I don't have, like you named it. I don't have $200,000. I got this, but I don't have $200,000. So it's not the perfect time. It's like, are you waiting for perfect? Because perfect isn't there. Right? Yeah. So we have to say yes before we know all the steps, and we have to say yes before it's perfect.
Yes. Ooh, I love it. Now, Mitch, this is That's the kind of truth that sets people free. Leaders, coaches, entrepreneurs.
Right?
We are so busy earning credibility that we forget to allow ourselves to start. Just start.
Yes.
Just get
Yep.
started. Just get started. I
Absolutely.
love that. Whew, man, y'all know we are fed. Now, the point of this is not for you all to sit here and get your hips chunked up with fat and get a beer belly off of this content that he's putting down. I need you
I
to
love you.
press pause right now and share this to someone. And don't be judgy. Don't be like, oh, I know who needs to hear this. This procrastinating. Don't be judgy. Just send it. But remember, the reason why this is creating some sort of thought for you is because there's an area in here for you too. Now, Mitch, this is one of our favorite signature segments. It's called Flip the Script. I want you to take us to a moment where you had to rewire your mindset to rewrite your future. What was that defining moment, and what did you have to let go of?
Oh, I tell you what, I love it. And you are such a good interviewer because we've gotten to really go to a lot of fun places. I know for me, this has been the reason why I teach on the subjects that I teach on is because I need to be reminded of it daily. And I know for me, like I talk about growing up. I grew up a worried kid. I would worry myself sick and, and wind up getting so sick, I would confound the doctors and be home for weeks at a time and all of those things. And as I got older, I didn't get better at handling it. I got better at hiding it. And it's one of those things that I looked like I was fine on the outside, but I was just torn up on the inside. And I kept telling myself, I'll really enjoy this once I get this thing done. I'll really be in the moment once this thing's behind me. I'll really, be at my best once I can check this thing off my to-do list. And I was just missing out on life. And I'm really grateful for an experience that I had. I talk about this a little bit on the podcast, but when my wife and I lived in Montana, I had the opportunity to climb Granite Peak, which is the tallest mountain in Montana. Wow. And it takes a couple of days to get there. And it's funny because a friend of mine was going to do it. And he's like, you want to do it? And I'm a recovering warrior and not that great with heights. But I'm like, sure, why not climb the tallest mountain in Montana? And it's 2 days hike just to get to the mountain. Wow. And it's some of the most beautiful country in the world. Like it's God's country. And I mean, there are flowers that grow in this mountain range that don't grow anywhere. And you get to see crystal clear streams and beautiful lakes and, wildlife comes up to you that they don't allow hunting around there. So wildlife just comes up to you. It's incredible. And I missed all of it. I hiked it. I was there, but I missed all of it because I was doing what I'd always done. I said, hey, I'll enjoy all of this once I get done with that. Once I summit that peak, that's when I'm really going to enjoy this, right? And what's interesting, fast forward, is we woke up the morning we were going to summit. We open our tent flaps, and it's crystal clear skies, best weather that we've had so far. Start making our way up the mountain. And as we do, it starts to snow, which the guys I was with was like, isn't this beautiful? And I'm like well, there's 4 more ways I can die on Granite Peak because it's snowing, all this kind of stuff. And then a fog starts to roll in, and we can't see more than 10 feet around us, which was a blessing because the last part of the hike is about a 2,000-foot drop off of one side and about a 1,000-foot drop off the other side. So it's a blessing to only be able to see a few feet in front of you. But at the very top of Granite Peak is this rock. It's tabletop rock. It's a flat rock. You stand on top of it. If you Google it, you will see a bunch of people standing on top of tabletop rock showing that they won. They summited the peak. And everybody that I was with, they got that picture. Me, I'm sitting on the rock with one hand, raised triumphantly, the other hand holding on for dear life to this rock. And as my foot came down off of that rock, I heard something, and I'll never forget it. I heard something, and it sounded like somebody took a handful of firecrackers and threw them at our feet. And our guide, a guy named Craig, yells one word. I'll never forget exactly how it sounded. He said, lightning. And as it turns out, we weren't in fog. It turns out we were in the clouds of an electrical storm.
Wow.
And yeah, we all had metal equipment, metal tools, all these kinds of things, making us 4 lightning rods on the top of Granite Peak. And one of my friends almost got zapped. Like his hair literally was on fire from a lightning strike, all that stuff.
Wow.
And our guide got us to this rock outcropping. I'll never forget, huddled underneath there praying, kind of those deal making prayers like, Lord, I'll never do something stupid like this again. Right. Exactly. And we did get down. We did live through it, obviously. But later that day, I'll never forget, God put it on my heart. He said, kiddo, that's the way you've been living life. He said, you've been going from summit to summit, telling yourself you really enjoy life. You'll really be in the moment. You'll really take all of this in once you get the summit done. But then once you get the summit done, lightning strikes and you're off to the next summit. It's like, we got to change something. And so I came back from that saying, okay, I got to change the way that I look at the world. I got to change the way that I deal with worry and anxiety and fear. And so I really started to work on that for me, myself. And then I started to teach on it as soon as I felt like I could with any kind of credibility, because I knew that if I was teaching from the journey, I would be able to progress in that journey even faster. Yes. Yeah. Not from the standpoint of, I got this all figured out. I'm perfect. It's like, hey, I need this, and this is something I needed today. So if you need this, hopefully this helps you too, right? That's the approach I took.
It's like sharing a meal every day.
Yep,
with someone else.
That's exactly.
I love
but
it.
I knew we were, at the base of that mountain, and I can remember thinking, I don't want to miss out on my life. On my life. My wife Melissa was pregnant with our first son, and I'm like, I don't want to miss out on that. And I was absolutely treating it like one of those summits. Like, once our son's here, then I'm going to do this, right? And I'm like, I don't want to miss out on my life with my wife, my life with, we have 2 sons now. And I didn't want to miss out on life with them. I wanted to live in the moment and really be at my best as often as I can and help as many people do that as well. So, it's a long story, so I apologize for that. But that was one for me that was pivotal. To say, hey, I gotta change.
That's a huge mindset shift, because I've gone through that process too, believe it or not, Mitch. Powerful. That's what I call growth in motion. I was a preschool teacher in part of my life's journey, and I remember when an educator brought in the term, the process and not the product, when it came to working with young children. And that was my life lesson for me when I started to shift, but then understood later on when I would encounter life-altering things like these, that have I really lived, or was I just trying to get from one thing to the next? And process, not the product. It was reference to when children are doing their little artwork, little kids, 3, 4, 5, 2, they're going to do on a piece of paper. I'm like, look, I made a car. And some people don't know how to respond to it. Someone would say, oh, I see you made a bus. Or if it looks like a bus, and if it doesn't look like anything, you're puzzled. Like, what the heck did you do?
Right. You made a red box. Like, what?
Right, exactly. Or start suggesting things to those kids. So they were training us back in those days that we should work with that child through the process and see how they were thinking, feeling, and what they're trying to express. And so you can only do that if you spend time through the process, and you want to make sure the process will include they have the right tools, they're present, it's whatever they want, it's not what we tell them to draw a pink bird. And so when I think about what you just shared and what I've gone through, I've used that process and that product, which helps me to stay in the present and really enjoy the journey. Because one time I looked at my life, I remember when I was in college and I was working so hard to get done, because I just moved back to the USA. And I had to redo all my education because my credits didn't count, And so I was just going through trying to get through it. And then I remember being at graduation and feeling deflated. I was like, because I didn't have any jobs lined up to go with the new degree or anything. I was, and I was like, this is kind of weird. And then it turned out my aunt passed away a few months later. And she was 63. She died of a heart attack in the hospital, and we didn't even realize she was sick. And I remember that I can't waste the moments, because I had put off spending time with her so I can finish this degree that wasn't even that exciting. And I didn't go back to our country to spend time with family that was there. And I told myself, so I'm always in this motion of how much more do I need to enjoy, stop, and really, like I talk about stopping and smell the roses sounds like a thing we just say, but it's really just smell everything.
It's true.
Not just the roses. Like if you really try to smell everything, you're going to get closer to it. You're going to see it better because now you're trying to get closer to the smell, right? So when you stop and just smell everything, enjoy the process of becoming, because that's where the good stuff is, right? That's so where it is. Tomorrow's not promised. So thank you for that. I know it's a long story, but it's well worth it. And I believe someone's going to shift and ask themselves reflectively, am I really enjoying life, or am I trying to get to the next thing, which never really comes out as fulfilling as I anticipate it to be, right? Exactly. So before we let's talk about, before we get into Mindset Bites to go, I have to ask, what is success to you now? And what's your next big thing, and what kind of mindset is required for you to reach those goals? Because you've done a lot. You've done a lot of growth, and you've accomplished so much.
I appreciate that so much. And it's one of those things where, like, it's so interesting in that, in your own journey, all you see are the things that you want to do, still achieve, right? And so I appreciate you saying that. That means a lot. I know for me, there's a lot of different definitions of success, and I think it's good as an entrepreneur or as a leader to have tangible goals, around impact or revenue or traffic. You need to put some numbers to some things. Yes. But there are some certain things that you just can't put numbers to, and oftentimes those are the things that are most important. And I know for me, as far as from a success standpoint, my goal is always to help my wife and to help my two boys to be all that God created them to be. And it's one of those things where if I help 1 million people do that, but I haven't helped my boys do that, I'm not successful. There's no way, right? But if I can help my boys and help 1 million people, then come on, I can do that all day long, right?
Yes. So for me, the additional. The bonus.
Yep, exactly. That's a bonus, right? So for me, that's a huge part of it, to be present for my wife, to be present for our boys. So they're, our younger son's a working actor in LA. Our older son is being deployed in the military, and so it's a prayer rich time, as you can imagine.
Absolutely.
But literally, my prayer for each one of them is, Lord, help them to be all that you created them to be, and help me to know my part in that.
In it.
And so that's for me. That's my measure of success and truly my life goal. And part of it, I want to be successful in business so that we can have the freedom to go where we want to go and be where we feel called to go. All of those things, but really, all of it falls to far second after that as my primary goal.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that warms me. That's just so motivating. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
That. And so everyone listening, we obviously thank your son for going into serve our country, and we pray God's protection over him. And of course, your other son is lighting up a path in Hollywood like no other. And so we need, I don't have to ask about who these young men are because I've met their dad. And
thank you.
Obviously, they are super 10xing whoever and whatever you have planted and sowed in them.
They are way cooler than I am. I guarantee that. They are doing cool stuff, and they are amazing humans. So I am wildly proud of them.
Yeah, I'm going to go sneaking around to figure out who they are now. You see, it's fun. I get inspired by looking at every people's journey and how all the puzzle pieces of incredible people I meet. It's just at some part of that's what makes my life rich, is connection. I feel it does all of us. After food, clothing, and shelter, is connection. And so whether we know it from distant connection or not, I'm always looking for good, positive things around me, because you can be so distracted and just see, the 20% of all the crazy things happening, but there's just so much good in our world. And that's the part where I feast and I keep a cognizant awareness of what's not so great, but only really focus on what problems I might be able to solve, or indirectly support other people to solve. And that's all.
Well, that's why I so appreciate your mission and what you're doing. And like this podcast is the example of exactly what you just talked about, right?
Yeah.
Like you are curious. And so you can't help yourself but engage in great conversations. But what, part of the podcast is you get to, fulfill one of your things, your zones of genius of having engaging, amazing conversations. But you also are bringing your listeners along with you, right? You're bringing me as a guest along with you.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of somebody like you are the example of living a dream, think, do life in that you are, it's kind of that you can't help but take people with you as you go and do this. We all benefit from you walking out a dream to think through how you might do it and then taking action. Like we're all benefiting from your dream, think, do journey. So thank you so much for the work, the wildly important work that you're doing.
Thank you. And that's you're doing also, and that's what made this even a more fiery episode. And that's the thing. My goal, and I know yours, obviously, is that someone would listen to this and just go with it. Like, you only have this much fun, have this much light. There's a bunch of things I can tell you. Like one of my computers, my main computer crashed out a few days ago, and we're working to get one and looking at what do I really need while I use the other ones and things. But that doesn't faze me. I get to come on this camera. I get to get on here. As long as it's working, I'm like, we're going. Like
we're doing it. We can do this.
It's all the things. We have life. Yep. Life is lifing behind the scenes of purpose and fulfillment. But you're always so passionate and ready and I can't say happy. I would say joy. It just is always in the deep. You keep yourself filled. You surround yourself with people, all the things you said. So now I get to give you this microphone and I step away from the camera and the microphone to let you give us mindset bites to go where you leave us with one mindset bite or several to carry us as we take the step, 90 seconds or less. Mitch, it's all yours. I'm stepping away now.
I love it. I don't want you to go, but absolutely. So
I want your face because I think we're going to do something with Mindset Bicycle because what you guys say at the end, oh my goodness. So I get away from it so you can have the moment with the people. Here we go.
I love it. So, I know there are so many rock stars. There are so many high achievers that are listening to this right now. And my hope is that we were able to inspire you to think what might be some new dreams for you. How might you want to be thinking a little differently? What might you want to do? But I want to encourage you to just start small. Give yourself permission to start small. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know, hey, if I do this new thing, it's going to lead to a new career, or it's going to lead to a new business, or it's going to lead to a new relationship. Just it's exactly like we talked about. Fall in love with the process as opposed to the product and be able to say, all right, what's a small but significant thing that I want to do as a result of hearing this episode, and then go do that small but significant thing. Maybe even something that takes you 15 minutes or less. You just never know where that one small step might lead you. Keep taking those small steps, but it starts with one small step. And I don't think it's any accident that you heard this. So I just want to encourage you, begin, start, and give yourself that permission to not wait until it's perfect, but just begin today.
I love it. Start now, begin today. Now, Mitch, listen, you are so phenomenal. And I told you before we even got on camera that we have to do a few more episodes together.
Yes, exactly. I feel like we're just getting started.
We're just getting started. It's like, can we just do a bunch? Here's the thing, guys. Mitch also coaches coaches. And so, Mitch, of course, tell us who you coach. I got to get that. And then tell us how to connect with you.
Yeah, so I'm kind of weird in that I coach entrepreneurs, founders, executives. That's half of my practice. But I started coaching other coaches back in 2006. People just started demanding, like, hey, it's working. Like, whatever you're doing is working. Help us. And so I still have my own coaching practice. I just believe you got to keep your hand in it if you're going to teach it. Yes. And so on the other side, I coach coaches and speakers who are truly wanting to build businesses where they can have the impact and the income, because I believe those two things go together, and to take their business to that next level. A lot of the people that we help are people who are just getting started in that journey, or they're people like me that went and invested in really expensive training from a big name group, but didn't get any business training. And we found, you know this probably, but less than 15% of coach training programs and certification programs have any business training at all. We kind of flipped the script on that. We have a coach certification, but we focus more on the business launch, and we teach what we call that 6-figure sequence. And so that's been a huge part of it. We've helped thousands of coaches since 2006 around the world. We have online training and we have live training, and I just absolutely love to do it. God put it on my heart to encourage his encouragers, and encouragers to me are coaches, speakers, and content creators. Because, hey, you're doing the hard work to encourage the world, so you deserve to be paid well as you do that. So people can go to my website, check it out, mitchmatthews.com. But if you are a coach, I've got a couple of free gifts just because you're listening to this episode. If you're a coach or thinking about being a coach, you can go to mitchmatthews.com/44 ways. And we put together a guide on 44 different ways to find clients and to grow your business. And then if you're a prayer person like me, we also put mitchmatthews.com/11 prayers together. And those are 11 prayers that I pray on a regular basis for my business and for my clients. And they've been game changer prayers. So you can go, both of those are totally free. I want you to check them out. And it's been something that we've been doing. I just feel called to encourage the encouragers, and I love doing it. So thank you so much for letting me to get to have this amazing conversation, but also get to encourage the encouragers along the way too.
Absolutely. I believe that we're going to do a specific episode on that. And of course, you guys don't even have to wait for that. Just go to the podcast. I have people say, so do you have a freebie? I'm like, the podcast?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, of course I have something, of course, but I'm like, go there, because that's where it's not just my voice. There are all these other people that are telling you pretty much the same thing over and over again in different languages, I would say, because it might be English, but the language might be different from different people, that you hear it differently from someone else. So y'all, if today lit a fire in you, connect with Mitch, dive deeper into his work at mitchmatthews.com. Dream, Think, Do podcast, Encouraging the Encourager podcast, and download 44 ways. I'm going to get it when we hop off this call, and I'm definitely going to be saying the 11 prayers, because I am working on scaling to a 6-figure. Maybe Mitch is going to be my coach in this season for specifically that. God has a sense of humor, because I put it to him and asked him to send someone to guide me while I work to build and clarify. But I really believe that you do need a coach and someone who has done it exceedingly well over and over again for themselves and for others, to help you to be the best version of what you're going to provide in what you're offering. So Mitch, again, thank you so much for sharing your voice, your heart, and your wisdom. You are now officially a part of the tribe, and I am officially part of yours, and I am not going anywhere.
It's just the beginning. This is just the beginning. I love it. You are such a good host. So I just so appreciate you, and such an honor, and I'm so excited to be a part of your tribe. You've got amazing listeners, and I just hope they were encouraged today.
I know they were. So to our listeners, remember, don't wait for permission. Give it to yourself. This has been another empowering episode of Mindset Master Moments. And until next time, think, speak, do, become, and dream big. Think, and just get out there and do it. See you guys soon. Bye.